Welcome back, and as we start off, we're doing a thermometer test on the civic space, as is characteristic of us here on the Morning Brief on Channels Television, to check the health status of, the freedom of expression space online, on-site, and this time around, it may also have to be done on the pages of publications, of course, in light of recent events. And joining us this morning to have this conversation, we have Mr. Olanrewaju Lawal, who is a legal practitioner who joins us virtually from London, United Kingdom. We also have Mr. Yakubu Mohammed, a journalist who joins us from our Abuja studio. And here in our Lagos studio, we have Mr. Nelson Ekunjimi, who is the Executive Director, Committee for the Protection of People's Mandate, Rights activist and good governance advocate. Mr. Ekunjimi, welcome to Channels Television.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
For good reason, I'm going to start with Mr. Lawal, who's a legal practitioner, and we're looking at freedom of expression, particularly against the backdrop of the most recent arrest of human rights lawyer, Mr. Dele Farotimi. And, in quick reaction to that, of course, the NBA and human rights lawyer, Mr. Falano, have condemned the action, stating categorically that Lagos and Edo State are among two states that have decriminalized defamation. So on the back of that, against the 1999 Constitution as an overview, is Mr. Farotimi liable under the defamation laws? And if he is, I'd like you to put it in proper context for us.
Okay, thank you for having me. Indeed, it's a very important question. I will not be able to talk about whether or not Mr. Dele Farotimi is liable, because I don't have the full fact. I'm neither his lawyer nor the lawyer for the state. However, I will talk in light of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Section 39 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999 as amended, among other rights, guarantees a right to freedom of expression, which includes a right to hold opinion, receive, impart ideas and information without any interference. However, no right, no matter how fundamental it is, that is absolute. And that is why, of course, Section 45 of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Constitution, as amended, it's in one way or the other takes the right in form of limitation. In other words, it is an exception to the freedom itself, and in one way or the other, it gives the right to other people. To be specific, the section provides that insofar the right is not absolute, the right is limited where there is a law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, which tends to protect the right of others. And this is where the law of defamation comes in. The law of defamation is in two perspectives. It has criminal ingredients and also it has civil ingredients. Sometimes anyone who feels his right has been infringed upon, in other ways, he or she has been defamed, can decide to pursue it under the criminal law or civil law, because the purposes are not the same. For criminal law, it is when you want to go for punishment. And for civil law, this is where you want to repair the damage which has been done to you. It can come in form of compensation whatsoever. So depending on what you choose to go for. So I don't want to bore you with the legalese. However, the defamation in itself simply means a statement made either in written or in words that tends to injure the character or that is detrimental, put simply, detrimental to the reputation of an individual. The ingredients of criminal defamation is not entirely different from the ingredients of civil defamation. In other words, the statement must be communicated to the third party. It can come in form of electronic means, because electronic means of this dissemination of information is part and parcel of documents. So whichever way you communicate an information to a third party, it can be public, it can be just only one person, insofar it is not communicated to the person whose character is being injured. So it satisfies the condition that the information can be deemed to be defamation. It can be written in books. So the difference between the one that is spoken and the one that is written or that is documented, as I've stated before, is that one is libel and the other one is slander. All I'm saying, in essence, is that defamation is an exception, is part of exception to the freedom of expression that has been guaranteed by the Constitution. And if you look at it critically, because the reason in law is a perfect equity, the reason for the thought of defamation or criminal defamation is a fundamental right itself, and that is where many people don't look at it from. Defamation, in one way or the other, is giving or is returning the right to dignity and honor to another person, so that in the course of you exercising your right to freedom of expression, you must operate within the doctrine of proportionality.
Right.
So that your right will not infringe the right to dignity and honor of another person. So that is the purpose or the reason behind the law of defamation in terms of civil law or criminal law. So in essence, freedom of expression is not absolute. And we must understand that.
All right, so it's a balancing act here to determine how, the right of the other person has been infringed upon, and of course the difference between libel and slander. But let's bring it to the studio now. Mr. Kunjimi, of course, our Constitution guarantees freedom of expression, but how do we, define the fine lines of, expressing oneself as against infringing on another's right?
Well, thank you very much. The guest that spoke from London had set the template, and it is the fact that every right comes with responsibility, and like he rightly said, no right is absolute. Otherwise, I can say my right to eat, if it becomes absolute, it could also give me the right to take poison, and the consequences. So be that as it may, I think it is important for us as a people to recognize that, like we see, words are like egg. When it's spoken, it cannot be, brought back. And so persons making comments, expressing opinion, must always have it at the back of their mind. Just like the 4-way test of Rotary. Is it fair? Will it promote good brotherliness? So people must take into consideration that this comment of mine, because majorly you find this abuse of people's rights, like this slander we talked about, because defamation takes two phases, either it's libel or slander. Libel is when it's in a written form, maybe in a book or any other publication, but slander is words of mouth. So persons must recognize that for a society to thrive, for there to be peace, equity, and justice, the rights that you have, whatever right you have, that it is not absolute. Otherwise, the society will, dovetail into a state of anarchy.
All right, let's bring in a journalist on this one and maybe get your sense, your opening thoughts, because you've followed stories like this from time to time. You've seen how they start, how they end. By the way, this case is a very interesting one. So there's what happened before. That's what was written in the book, right? That's, I think, the crux of this case. And then there was the process of arresting him, right? What happened in his office, how phones were confiscated, how he was taken from Lagos to, Ekiti State, and now the case in itself. The NBA had raised issues about whether this is criminal or civil. Others had raised issues about the jurisdiction and the rest. But following this trail, what really jumps at you?
Okay, thank you very much. Things like this are normal, even though they are very abnormal. They are normal in this country. So now we have had several cases where a petition is issued against someone. If it is petition, you have to settle things in court, right? So now there are patterns of harassing people in the course of you seeking redress. So now you want to correct something, a defamation, right? Then the next thing you do is to get police to arrest this person, and a lot. So it's because Farotimi is somewhat popular. This happened to people a lot. There are people that have been picked up, especially in some northern part of the country, and you never heard anything about them again. That is the end, right? Because you have access to security personnel. Then what you just do is use your influence to get this person arrested, and that's all. So now look at what happened to Daily Farotimi, how he was tried in the court. Right? Everything was done orderly. So beyond that, as a journalist now, this happened to us a lot. And when we talk about court, magistrate court is a go-to to many of them. Right? You are abducted or invited for questioning. From invitation, they lock you up, and from there, they are charged to court on bogus charges. So we still need to go a long way about this. So the civil society organization, the journalists will not get tired about spotlighting these kind of cases.
Let me quickly come back to the studio. Mr. Kujumi, do you agree with him? The points he made. He says this is normal, but actually also abnormal. And he talked about, him being arrested and taken to court and all of that process. Do you agree that this is normal, but abnormal?
I disagree with him, absolutely. And it is the fact that when things like this happens to people that, maybe they have political leanings, you will find different narratives to suit, their sentiments. This was a man that was picked up based on the order of a magistrate court. And you also we've heard different reports that defamation has the criminal and the civil aspect. For example, recently, there was a threat to my life by some persons who alleged that I was holding an opinion contrary to the belief of their group. And what was the threat? That they will put me under. And I was like, what is the meaning of under? And I wrote a petition to the police. The police were now looking for how to arrest that person. If it had gotten into the public domain, the next thing they will say is that he defamed me and I used the police to arrest him. Meanwhile, the reason for the police arresting him, if they had succeeded, was because of the threat to life, which was a criminal offense. So in this case, it wasn't just that the police on their own, based on the petition. You recognize that the police must have carried out their own investigation. And in the course of their investigation, which they are allowed to do under law, they have the power to arrest. So the NBA rushing to condemn, I wonder, maybe the NBA is saying the police has become the courts, or even Mr. Femi Falana that we heard condemned, I would have been, worried that they would have questioned the jurisdiction of the Ekiti, Ekiti court to hear the matter. But don't forget that the petition by this elder statesman was written to the Ekiti State Commander of the Nigerian Police. So he's instituting the case within the jurisdiction of Ekiti State. So I expect people to put issues in proper perspective, that look, an offense has been alleged to have been committed, and it is the duty of the police to investigate. For you to say the man was abducted, the man was not abducted by the police. The man was arrested based on the order of the magistrate court. That's the information we have as at now.
All right, let's take it to Mr. Lawal. Let's put a few things that are facts. Fact is that a book was written and allegations were made that bordered on defamation, according to Afe Babalola, which is why he petitioned and got this gentleman arrested, taken to Ekiti. But let's talk about what the law says. We know what the criminal code says from 373 to almost 380. It explains the consequence of all of this action. But the worry here is, what should be the procedure, which is why we want to get this legal perspective on this issue. He said, Farotimi said, there was never a time he was served to appear in any court in Ekiti. But from what he gathered, they said they instituted a case. He didn't show up a couple of times. That's why a bench warrant was issued for his arrest. He also said that everything he did, said, wrote, and everything he did was in Lagos. Why is he being taken to Ado Ekiti for prosecution? So I want you to speak to what the law says as far as this particular sequence of events is concerned. If he did if he did commit a crime in Lagos, should he be taken to Ekiti? Allegedly, I must add.
This is a very good question and an interesting one. You see, in as much as I'm trying to avoid making comments on the merits of Dele Farotimi's case, I would like to be very careful in my comment as well, so that I will not fall into the same problem that we're complaining about. You see, in law of defamation, whether criminal law or civil law, I would like to establish one principle. The principle is the doctrine of effect. Now, what does it mean? It means where a defamation is alleged, it doesn't matter where the publication was made. You can make a statement in Nigeria and effect can be in America. You can make a publication in Kwara State and effect can be in Lagos. The book written was read or is intended to be read worldwide. And I've stated that the reason in law is the perfect equity. If there is no doctrine of effect, if a book is written in Nigeria and is read, or if it's written, let's limit ourselves to the territorial jurisdiction of Nigeria. If it's written in Kwara State and is read in Osun State, which is now a southern part of Nigeria, which operates criminal law, a criminal code. The criminal code in the south and the civil. So I'm trying to go in line of your question, which is criminal law. Now, in the case of Patrick Njovian versus State, an offense was committed in Kwara State, Bashita. That is a Supreme Court case. They were arrested and brought back from Ibadan. They masterminded the offense in Ibadan, which is armed robbery. So they were arrested and brought back. So what I'm saying in essence is that whether or not the offense is committed in a state, if the effects can be established in another state, or the part of the ingredients of that offense, don't forget, criminal defamation has to do with the effect itself, not only the publication. So I will disagree with the position being held by some people that if the defamation or if the book was written in the author, did he intend that the book will not be read elsewhere? No. The answer is no, absolutely no. So on that basis, I beg to disagree with the position that he cannot be arrested and taken to Ekiti State. That is just the position on that. I'm not commenting whether or not he has committed the offense, because everyone who is accused of an offense is presumed innocent until contrary is proved in the court of law. But I want to call our attention to another thing. No country, no any system in any country operates in utopia. The fact that when an offense...
My apologies, just to add to it, arrest would naturally suggest that he had refused to appear in court. Is my presumption correct?
That's not correct.
Okay.
That's
because
not correct.
that is his own. I'm putting out his own position. He said they issued a warrant, but he was never served at any time to appear in any court. He revealed out the fact that there are other issues in Lagos, that he appeared in court when he was invited. He was never invited. So why come to arrest him? So I wanted you to speak to the legalese.
That is not the language of the law. You see, one thing I observe about most of these so-called activists, I am saying it with all sense of responsibility. Most of them do not practice law. The fact that an offense has been alleged, and as such, maybe a petition has been written against you, and the police deem it necessary in their own independent opinion, feels there's a reasonable suspicion that that offense has been committed. Maybe they have some facts that we do not have. The law does not mandate them to invite you. They can arrest you straight away, because the law says even if there is a reasonable suspicion that offense has been committed, you can be arrested. However, the normal procedure is that investigation comes before arrest. That is what the Supreme Court has been saying in many cases. But if, like lawyers will say, res ipsa licito, for instance, on the offense of defamation of character, of which I do not entirely agree whether or not someone can be arrested for defamation in Ekiti State, because I don't know what their criminal law is saying with respect to defamation, criminal offense of defamation, because the principle is nullum crimis lege. No one can be charged or punished for an offense until that offense is written in the law. So I don't know if the criminal law of Ekiti State provides for defamation. However, if it provides for that, and the police, with the evidence they have with them, they do not need to invite anyone. They can go straight away and arrest. Okay, let's put it in this perspective.
So, Mr. Larinwaju, is this offense bailable?
Of course.
It's bailable.
Of course. So, there are certain offenses that are not, there is no offense that is not bailable. But there are certain offenses, because of their nature, the law says they are not ordinarily bailable. Because
is this one of them?
Of course, it is part of is one of the offenses that are bailable.
No, using your word now, ordinarily bailable.
It is ordinarily bailable.
Okay.
But at the discretion of the court.
All right. Let's expand this conversation now. We'll come back to you, but let's democratize the conversation and bring it to the journalist. I imagine that there are many lessons for everyone here, particularly for journalists, because we also dance on the fine lines of, conversations that sometimes infringe upon the fundamental human rights of other individuals, sometimes bodies. I'll continue with that line of questioning, but let's take this conversation to the streets now and check on what Nigerians are saying about freedom of expression. Speaking of which, our correspondent, Deborah Agbalama, has is feeling the pulse of some Nigerians on the streets of Port Harcourt. Deborah.
Hello, good morning to you. And from Port Harcourt here, I am right now at a very busy junction, and I'm going to be speaking with Nigerians on what they think about freedom of speech. We all know that the Constitution, Section 39 of the Constitution actually states clearly that no matter your religion, your sex, you have the right, your color, you have the right to speak for your opinion to be heard. We don't know if Nigerians are aware of all this. So I'll be calling someone. Just come closer, please. What's your name, please? Come closer. All right?
Yeah.
If you have freedom of speech, so come closer. Don't be scared.
Never. I'm not scared.
All right.
I'm a typical Nigerian man. I'm proud to be a Nigerian. Very, very proud.
What's your name, first of all? Timothy who?
Teller.
Okay, Timothy Teller. Freedom of speech. What do you understand by that term?
Freedom of speech is speech a word that you can express your feelings whatsoever you are passing through to the government or in any society or organization. So you speak up and they will understand it over whatsoever you are passing through. That's what I understand. Or freedom of speech.
Okay.
But in this our country, there are the calibers of people that works for them. If you are in one class in Nigeria, there's a war. When I will say it work, but there's a war. That's the calibers of people that's freedom of speech work for them. That's the truth about it.
Can you give us an example where it didn't work for the low class that you remember?
Why it doesn't work for the top classes?
Where an example, like where did you find out that it didn't? A low class person spoke and was victimized. Can you just give us an example?
Actually, I am one of them. I don't want to go far. I'm one of them.
Tell us about it.
There was a time I lost a lot of things, my property. So because I expressed it, they said, no, it's not what like that. I just say, wow. So because the other person that we are dragging talks with is a high-class man. So you be on such kind of a lawyer and whatever, I'm really down. So I don't know, I don't have anybody to stand by me. So I just talk them as I see that I cannot go anywhere, I just keep up.
Okay. So in other words, you spoke out that whatever you were talking about was yours.
Yeah.
And then because the other person's voice was louder. Okay.
I don't consider that speech. So that's why I say it doesn't work much. Yeah. Work right class.
Okay. Are you on social media though?
I was
okay, well, but in your own take, do you think that when it comes to social media activities, Nigerians quite have that freedom of speech because they can call the government out any day, anytime?
Yes.
What's your take on it?
If those social media, they are trying their best, that's clear truth. They are trying their best to make sure that everybody to speak up their mind and to make sure that all them have those voice. For instance, even those people that are taking this, all those social media work over it and say a lot of words so that those people will be free. If not part of those social media, I believe that some of them are still increasing there. But it's because of those social media, they speak out. That's why they are free now, some of them.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Timothy thinks that we still have a long way to go, even though he believes that the social media has some kind of edge and people are speaking up. I have someone else who's standing by to talk, so perhaps we'll go back to the studio so I can change the person.
All right, Deborah, we'll get back to you, but so many lessons to learn from that space. Speaking of lessons, let me land on the initial question just before we went to Deborah, and I'm coming to you now, Mr. Yakubu. What are the lessons for journalists? Because we're also very active in that space in terms of, how events like this, shape conversations that impact on the rights of individuals and corporate organizations. So what should journalists be deducing from this? So, Mr. Mohammed, that's for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one thing I would say is that journalists should always, like we argue in one of the events we had last week, self-censorship is very important, right? And when we talk about journalists, we need to put it in a proper context, right? Are they really journalists or somebody who calls himself a blogger? So there are code of ethics, right? When you are reporting about someone or an issue or an organization, there are code of ethics that should guide you. So in all, one thing I believe is with what Mr. Lawal said, I believe that journalists also need to fill some knowledge gap, right? By making research very well before, taking words from the street or from online conversation. So all boils down to self-censorship to avoid things that could land you in court, which could also, expose how you are not knowledgeable about what you are reporting on.
Right. I think it's also important to reiterate that this is not about journalists, right? We are basically putting these issues to light. And I want us to speak to, quickly, that's for you, Mr. Yakubu. We've had journalists being held incommunicado for days. People had to go on social media to call for them. Daniel Ojukwu, one of them. We've had Fisa Shoyombo recently being held. So the procedure of security agencies in issues like this, or generally when they want to make arrests or when there is a case instituted, is also being called into question. This was brought to light because it's a popular person, and I think you mentioned that. So what happens to others who probably aren't popular on social media? And I think that's the point we also need to raise here, the procedure. We need to be sure that the security operatives are above board. So quickly, is that something you want to speak to before I come here to our studio?
Okay, so when we talk about the procedures now, so we may not even know. I believe you were at the event of CGI Day last week. A senior police officer was there and we were asking him what are the procedures before you arrest somebody. And he was saying he cannot disclose the operational strategies or whatsoever. So now, I will not call it a knowledge gap, but there are things we don't even know. Somebody can be arrested about what you don't even know. You can be a petition can be written against you, and you are not even in the know of anything. So now, my other colleague said there must be investigation before arrest. But it is in some cases when after you are arrested that the police start saying they are investigating the matter. So, to my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that we are even aware about the procedures. If a police officer we know that should tell us about this is saying that he cannot disclose this publicly. So the procedures is what we should spotlight.
Exactly.
We should have further conversation about.
Because what we have sometimes is people just doing anything and all in the name of arrest or court order. But let's come to you, Mr. Kujumi, as we wind down. I recall one of the supporters of the APC had an issue recently. He was arrested. His username PST Okeze Onsogbu on social media, and he went through that as well. And some were like, well, this can really happen to anybody, which is why we need to ensure that we pressure the police to ensure the right things are done. So you don't say you're acting in a court order, you confiscate mobile phones, harass people or assault people all in the name of arrest, because it could be anybody at any point. So your final thoughts on this one?
My final thought is that as a people, we need to recognize the fact that every right comes with responsibility, whether as citizens or as law enforcement officers. If the court has given an order, it is within the responsibility of the law enforcement agencies to carry out that order. So
maybe will the court say that detain this person incommunicado for days?
The court can order your arrest, and there are days that is allowed under law for the security agencies to go beyond those days allowed under law for you to be detained. They must obtain the order of the court. They must get an extension. We all know we have had cases of persons who have been detained beyond the statutorily approved days by the Constitution. And we know they get justice from the court. So it is for us to admonish ourselves, because what we are talking about here is something that could have happened to any one of us. And sadly, people take this freedom of expression as a license for lawlessness, because you have the right to hold an opinion does not mean you have a right to injure my own dignity as a person based on your opinion. Even holding that opinion yourself can be injurious to you, because you can hold an opinion that could lead you to commit acts that violates the laws of the land. So in expressing that freedom of expression, we need to be conversant with what does the law says. Where does
the time on the program?
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll take a break now. When we return, wait for it. You don't want to miss this next conversation. We'll be right back.